we are going to talk about coin purses. The motivation for today's demo is this little handbag, and you can add a bougie little chain to it. Inside there's a pocket, and it snaps shut like a vintage purse, right?
Old school.
Yeah, so I mean, like, it's big enough for a lipstick and a phone, and it's got a pocket on the back and a pocket on the inside, and it's like super bougie and weird. This is one of the patterns we're going to talk about. This is not the bag we're going to demo, but this is one of the patterns we're going to talk about. This is the one that we're going to demo how to make today. This cutesy little one right here. Just the right size for like actual coins. So I've got different parts of this bag in various stages of making. Okay. So yes, I raided DJ's toolbox. Don't tell him. So what I did was I took my chunk of fabric.
And of course you picked the one with the tramp stamp on
I
it.
did. She's got a nice little pear booty. And yeah, she's the one that has the tramp stamp, which I just think is funny. In the pattern, you have templates for both the small and the large shaped design. So in the pattern, you'll have the template. So what I did was I traced my template onto template plastic. I marked all of the relevant lines. The only lines on this I didn't mark was there's a seam allowance that goes around the edge, but it's a 1/4 inch seam allowance, so I didn't mark it. I marked we're going to call this the horizon line. So that's where you have the feature fabric is here and the accent fabric is here. I marked the circles on the side, and then I used my stiletto and I actually stabbed the holes where the tools, or where the marking was on the template, through the template plastic. I marked the center. I marked the start and stop sewing lines. So that is what the template is. So here's just a couple of tips to show you how to line all this up. Once you have your template drawn out, and the template is very important because the start and stop points are important so that it fits inside of this. Okay. So what I have done is I've drawn on my bit of fabric the top dome of my template. I stopped on the horizon line, and I'm going to show you why. Okay. I want to line up a seam allowance so that I can have 2 different pieces of fabric. So I'm going to take a ruler that has a 1/4 inch marking on it. I'm going to line up my 1/4 inch marking where I stopped drawing my line. The reason for that is I want to have a point to line up my second piece of fabric. So if I know that this is where the horizon is supposed to be, and then I mark a 1/4 inch away from it, I don't have to eyeball where to line up my second piece of fabric. I can just line it up on that line that I've drawn. Okay. I'm going to pin this, and then I'm going to sew it with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So this is why I didn't use a friction pen, because I wanted to be able to press this down, but I still wanted to have that reference mark. Okay. Now, I'm all about shortcuts. So what I have is the other 3 pieces of fabric that the pattern tells me I need for my bag. I'm going to stack all of these up. Okay. I've already started marking my line, so I can line this back up. Okay, and I can mark the bottom part of my template. This horizon line needs to be on your seam. Okay, if you are comfortable with your scissor skills, you can just leave the template on there. If you're not, then take the template off. I'm going to use my handy dandy little Tula Pink magnet so that I don't move this fabric around too much. I put my magnet through there. I'm going to hold all my layers together while I cut this out. So you're going to want some good scissors because you're cutting through 5 layers of fabric here. right, so I'm going to cut through all these layers at one time. So now I have all my pieces. Now the pattern, this is where the pattern has you stitch a decorative line, so you can just take an embroidery stitch. You'll see that I did a decorative stitch on my other one. You don't have to stitch anything if you don't want to. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to take 2 pieces of fusible fleece. I'm going to use our same template and our magnet. And we're going to cut this out again. I want to take away my seam allowance on these. I'm just going to eyeball it. So I'm going to take my scissors and cut a 1/4 inch away all the way around. Now, if this makes you nervous, I fully respect that. You can make a second template, a second piece of template plastic with the 1/4 inch seam allowance cut off. So here's my lining pieces. These are this is my front, this is my back. I'm going to fuse so the bumpy side of my fleece goes on the wrong side of my fabric. Here's some hot tips on using fusible fleece. Iron it from the fabric side because the glue is on the fabric side and it will glue down better. If you try to fuse it from the batting side, it just takes forever for the glue to melt because it has to go through the polyester of the batting. Once you get it stuck down there, if you hit this with steam, it's gonna stick. Okay, now in the pattern, it gives you tips on quilting this. For sake of time, I'm not going to quilt it. But look, now her little booty's sitting right on a little shelf. Isn't that cute? The pattern then tells you what to do with all your pieces. You're going to sew your front and your lining together and your back and your lining together. On my template, I have marked the start and stop lines. This line is my center. These are my start and stop lines. All of these are marked in your pattern. So what I do is I'll take this and I'll line up my template. And I'm going to do it on the side that has the fleece on it. And you don't have to mark the whole line, but just give yourself a reference point of where those start and stop lines are. I'm only going to sew one. I'm not going to sew both of them. These are my start and stop lines. Okay. We're going to take this over to the machine. Okay, so 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around. You're going to back up a little bit, start and stop at the beginning. We sewed from our start and our stop. Then we're going to turn this right way out. You know my hemostat trick? We're going to open this up, pull it through. Then we're going to use our turning tool and poke these sides out. Now, this is the point where you can quilt it if you choose to. These are so small, I'm not sure that that you have to do any quilting on this, but you're going to turn it right way out before you quilt it, which feels a little counterintuitive to how we usually make bags. But since these are so little and you want to really frame everything, so now you have the outside of your bag. This is another really good time to hit it with some steam. Okay, you're going to do that with your front and your back. The little holes that we made on the template, these ones here that I made the hole with my stiletto, you're going to line this up again on your turned piece. Use that horizon line to line up with your seam. And then I made holes in these so I could make a little dot here and a little dot here. What that's going to do is it's going to tell me where to start and stop my whip stitching, which I've already done on this one. So we've whip stitched this all the way around from where that dot is and where this dot is. I also used my magnets to hold this together while I was stitching it. A whole lot easier than pins. And then I'm going to take my little coin purse and I'm going to flip it right way out. Okay, be careful on those little whip stitches that you made. So you can see, and I used a white thread on purpose. You would probably use a a matching thread. So like instead of a hand stitch, I just did a little decorative stitch on mine. And on this one, she's resting her melons on the shelf. Now this is turned right way out. I've pressed this under. It doesn't have to be perfect because these are the pieces that are going to go inside the clasp. This glue, this fabric tack glue, do not use this anywhere that you want this to come out. This is never going to come out. But if you want something to stay in forever, this stuff's your friend. So I'm going to take my template and I'm going to find my middle here. So here's my middle on my front and my back. I'm just going to give myself a little reference line. You take your magnets and you pull this portion of the bag away, like just sort of fold it down and hold it out of the way. Then we can take and we're going to fit this inside of that space. And it feels like, oh my gosh, this isn't going to work, but it will. We're going to take some of this glue and we're going to measure enough of this paper to go all the way around twice. But this stuff, when it gets wet, it kind of expands a little bit and it fills in the space between the clasp and the fabric. And I'm just going to kind of fill it in there. Think like, you know, denture cream, and fill in the crack. Then take your paper or take your fabric. I'll make sure I get this the right side. Let's see, that's the front, that's the back. And we're going to kind of take the fabric, find your middle, make sure your middle is lined up with the middle of your clasp, and then take a screwdriver and push the fabric up into that space with the screwdriver. Okay, and it's not going to stay in there very well because it's kind of a wide opening. So here is where you take this stuff and you set it inside between the fabric and the clasp and take your screwdriver and just kind of cram it up there. And don't be gentle about it either. You really want it to get up in that space. This clasp is metal, you're not going to hurt it. And when you get it to the end, then snip off whatever's left over of that paper. Okay, and it, like I said, the glue does not dry right away, so it is going to kind of wiggle around and do what it's going to do. Okay, just be patient. Now, once you get, let's pretend we did the other side too. We're going to put the paper twine in there as well. Then take a bit of the batting, the scrap of batting that you had, just so that you don't scratch anything. Wrap your batting around that wire clasp and pinch it with some pliers. Just kind of squeeze it shut. Okay. We're going to do both sides of this. You're going to stuff your bag through so that your other side will have the other side of the clasp. Okay, so that's what I have for today's video. If you guys have questions, or if there's ever anything that you would like me to talk about on one of these live demos, just shoot me an email. I will do my best, or a Facebook message, whatever. I will do my best. Have a nice night.